Hey folks, how's it going? Gonna be trying something a little different today, if that's what you want to call it that. Today we're gonna be talking about books. Yay! I'm sort of copying this idea from my friend, that one media geek, who made a video on the same topic. But to be fair, I think we both have our fair share of books that we'd like to see adapted into movies and TV shows, and most especially cartoons. So I'm just gonna be taking my turn sharing my own wish list. Now, admittedly, unlike my friend Geek, I haven't been the biggest reader since, middle school, but there's still a lot of books that I grew up with from that time period, along with other books I'd read in elementary school that I just died to see adapted into some animated format. And I mean only animated, because the reputation that live-action book adaptations have is not great. I also do want to say that I do share a lot of the same sentiments in regards to what properties I want to see adapted into cartoons with Geek, but I'm going to try to keep my picks distinct from my friends. Since Geek covered mostly superhero and action, adventure-oriented works, the books I'm going to talk about are more cartoony and slice-of-lifey, albeit with action-adventure elements, so this video doesn't just feel like a mock buzzer of his. Also because there's just a lot of books I grew up with that I barely see anyone talk about online, so I'm just going to talk about them here. Also, not going to spend too much time on each entry, I'm just going to give an overview of what the books are about, my experience with them, and what kind of style I like to see them adapted into. And without further ado, let's cut the stalling and get to the books. First up on the list, Ricky Ricotta's Mighty Robot. Written by Dave Pilkey and first published in the year 2000 with artwork by Martin Ontiveros, and later reprinted in 2014 with artwork by Dan Zantat, this graphic novel follows the titular Ricky Ricotta, a young mouse boy who's lonely and in need of a friend, as a lot of book protagonists of this genre are, and as he starts bonding with a mad scientist giant robot after its refusal to be evil, instead choosing to befriend the mouse boy and defend Earth from the mutant alien animals from across the solar system. I remember checking these books out all the time for my elementary school library, along with some of the other books that I'll be talking about later. I think probably the reason I was so drawn to it, pun intended, is because it was authored by the same guy who wrote Captain Underpants and Dogman, and as I might expect, it incorporates some of the same write and style elements into its books, such as the Flipperama. Love that thing. And overall, just having a completely batshit premise that is executed so wonderfully, I love it. And it kind of pains me that this series has just been reduced to a sort of forgotten child of Pilkey's, because I really think it's just a fun graphic novel. I know that DreamWorks has kind of been on a roll recently with adapting books with things like The Bad Guys in Pilkey's own series Dogman, and I think Ricky Ricotta would work well as one of their next series on the chopping block. If it were to be adapted, I think a style akin to how Dogman was animated would just be really charming and work really well, plus like a hint of the Iron Giant as well, because, I mean, just look at it. But yeah, on to the next one, I guess. Yeah, I don't really have a transition between these things, just kind of moving on. Next up, Franny K. Stein. Written and illustrated by Jim Benton and first published in 2003, this series follows the titular Franny and her experiences as an outcast mad scientist in her elementary school, meddling around with experiments that may or may not cause havoc to the people around her. I always love a good mad scientist story, and this one I can especially relate to growing up as an autistic person in elementary school. The feeling of just being the quote-unquote quiet kid, I don't really like using that term, but it's for lack of a better phrase, and just being ostracized with the rest of your grade, but also getting to live in your own world with a morbid curiosity for strange knowledge, just is really captured so well here. The series has actually been receiving books as recently as 2021, which was 5 years ago. Oh. Well, anyways, I think an animation style that would suit this series really well would be something like Dexter's Laboratory, but if it was made by Tim Burton, to capture that charmingly morbid aesthetic, as I like to call it. Weirdly enough, Jim Benton actually has experience in animation. He even adapted one of his own properties as a cartoon for Fox Kids in the late 90s. So I say, Jim, maybe take a break from making comics for Facebook parents, and hop back onto the animation scene, because I think this could be a hit. Up next on the list, Chet Gecko. Written by Bruce Hale and published in 2000, a grade school gecko detective solves various mysteries around his school with his bird sidekick Natalie. That's really the whole gist of it, and like a lot of the other books I'm going to talk about, it's a simple premise done extremely well. For the animation, I think a format similar to something like Dora the Explorer or Blue's Clues could really help, since I think a show about detectives could benefit from an interactive element. Plus a style similar to like home movies I think would work really well for the series, not necessarily in style but more so in tone. Like, Chet is just trying really hard to mimic professional detectives and match their energy, with the only deterrent being that, well, he's a kid and his only reference is, like, old noir detective films. The same way that the kids in home movies try to make their own blockbuster movies from the comfort of their small town. Like, Chet and Natalie are just doing their detective stuff in their room and taking it super seriously, then his mom just barges in and is like, "Hey, what are you doing, sweetie?" And Chet's just like, "Mom, we're playing detectives." And she's just like, "Oh, that's nice, honey. By the way, dinner's almost ready, so come down soon." Yeah. And even not that, I'm imagining kind of like a Nick Jr. version of Spider Noir, which as a concept is kind of hilarious to think about for me. Next on the list, the Bailey School Kids. Written by Marcia Jones and Debbie Haley and first published in 1990, this series follows the grade schoolers of the titular Bailey School as they go on field trips and just live their lives in their little hometown. But with just one little thing, a majority of the adults in their town bear a startling resemblance to various mythical creatures and figures, everything from vampires to werewolves and even aliens, and it's up to them to figure out whether or not they actually are these creatures. After catching up on the series, it just screams like Netflix cartoons to me, but like in the best way possible. I know a premise like this feels kind of overdone with shows like Gravity Falls and Dead and Paranormal Park, but this series always felt distinct enough for me to warrant its own legacy. Plus, I'd say it's kind of like the precursor to those shows. Actually, my favorite element of the series growing up with it was the fact that in the end, whether or not the creatures are actually what the kids think they are is never flat out stated or clearly revealed. It's left up to the reader to decide whether they are these creatures or not. I don't know, something about that just kind of intrigued me, and this format I think could encourage kids to think and put clues together to come to their own conclusion. And plus the series is like over 80 books long, so if it does get adapted, they have a lot to work with. Okay, so before I get to my last book that I want to see adapted, there are a couple others that I wanted to talk about in this video, but I either didn't have enough time to warrant their own segment, or I couldn't really describe what format I'd like to see them adapted into, so as a little bonus, here's just a lightning round of honorable mentions. Yeah, I know, that one's a bit of an odd bugger, but I figured it could be like a baby's first reboot of Animal Face Off. Remember that thing? Yeah, I didn't think so. And finally, the last book I'd like to see adapted is Babylon Twins. Written by Michael Ferris Gibson and published in 2019 as part of his ongoing Yerba City trilogy, this story follows Chloe and Elle, two twin sisters who live out in the woods with their mother and little brother after their titular home, the fictional city of Yerba City, California, was overrun by artificially intelligent drones referred to as TikToks, and a super drug known as Tox took the city by a chokehold a decade ago. When their mother goes off on a mission and doesn't return, the two sisters venture out to rescue her in their post-apocalyptic city. I first remember hearing about this book's existence on a tele-animated video where it was a sponsor, and I decided that this would be one of the first books that I read on my own accord when I first started high school, and it did something for me that a lot of books rarely do for me. And that's make reading fun. And I just want to give a massive thanks to MF Gibson for making high school reading just a bit more bearable, at least at the start of it. I couldn't really find a whole lot of information regarding Gibson as an author besides a general portfolio site alongside an IMDb page, but besides being an author, he also is a filmmaker, so he has the potential to adapt his own work into a film or some other form of media. Although in my opinion, after seeing some of his community's fan art on his portfolio, I think there is some massive potential for animation here. In terms of if it was 3D, I think a style akin to something like Arcane or The Gaslight District, or even like Predator Killer of Killers would all suit this type of book wonderfully. And even in 2D animation, some art style like Genndy Tartakovsky's Primal or Unicorn Warriors Eternal, I think would really complement it as well. Now, it is worth acknowledging that this series is still ongoing, as of now at least, and is meant to be more of a general trilogy of books to my knowledge. It received its second book in 2023, and the third book currently doesn't have a confirmed release date yet, so the story remains to be finished. But I also want to say that, Gibson, if you're watching this, I think if you're thinking of adapting this sometime, I think it could be a hit as an animated piece, and hats off to you, man. Alright, well that's all I really wanted to talk about for this video. I don't really have a scripted outro for this, so I'll just end with a request that, if anything, take the reading recommendations from this video away the most. And if we don't see them adapted soon, we always have the books in the meantime. And as always, thank you all for watching, have a good one, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next video, which hopefully won't take too long. Alright, peace.